Hello Mihai, I am happy we're together here to talk about the 16th edition of MakingWaves. We are now going through very turbulent times, and it's not really easy to speak about films, but looking at the lineup of MakingWaves 16th, my feeling is that these new films of a generation which is not the generation of Puiu, Mungiu, Radu Muntean, it's a new generation that has a very strange and strong sense of, on the one hand, abandonment. In the lineup that we have, in most of the films, we have this kind of sense of abandonment. We have a sense of self-reflection, need for understanding, need for a quest, an apparent quest sometimes. It's not just about a quest for the truth, but it's a quest about who am I? And my take on it is that sometimes this quest has a bit of a self-sufficient answer. And then for me also what is very, very interesting is that because we also have wild Romania, the beautiful part is only found in nature. All of a sudden, you're in the real life, you're abandoned, you're looking for yourself and you don't find yourself, you're trying to understand what's going on, and then if you really want to have something beautiful, then you go to nature, and there's an escape. So, what about this line-up, Mihai?
Corina, as you said, these are very turbulent times, but how shall I put it? And we are encouraging everyone to watch the new Romanian films. Maybe watching films could be a refuge. Under this time, watching films could be therapeutic. Cinema can work sometimes as a therapy, as a distraction. It's not that the Romanian films we are proposing this year are escapist, or because, as you said, the topics are serious, strong. It's not a light year. It's not a light proposal. So maybe we are trying to divert attention from what's going on, offering something that's equally bleak and disturbing. Well, let's start with some technical data. We should emphasize the fact that it's a generous offer of Romanian films, very diverse, which has something to do with the fact that the year before it was the peak of the pandemic, and most films were either in shelves or in post-production or impossible to be released. So now we dealt actually with a lot of films on release, and it was a tough choice to put together, to choose which ones to highlight at this 16th edition. And that's why we decided to have, it's always like trying to have like a complete picture, focusing equally on feature films made by first-time directors or established directors, but then again a lot of documentaries, especially in Romania. There were a lot of good different documentaries being made after the big boom that Collective brought it. Collective actually was like a trigger for most Romanian filmmakers to immerse themselves in making documentaries. It was a great year for documentaries. And we do highlight this, we do represent this through 4 very different documentaries. You mentioned Wild Romania, which probably is, let's say, the least surprising, because it's very easy to relate to the way it's done, because there's a very recognizable reference, the National Geographic type of documentaries. And as well, because we realized from our previous editions that people are also keen to watch short films, we came up with this very round proposals with 9 films, so 5 feature films, fiction, 4 documentaries, and 9 short films. So I think this kind of encapsulates the diversity and the strength of the new Romanian cinema. And maybe it's good that we don't have like this big names, like you said, Puiu, Mungiu, Muntean, to divert attention from the other films. So most of the proposals this year are more or less at the same level of interest, and I think each of them could generate a fair share of interest. In terms of themes and topics, you're right in what you said. I would only add that maybe given the nowadays context, it's a mix of political and personal.
I would go from this to say also that there's a lot of violence in the films. I mean, it's very interesting. You have Unidentified by Bogdana Petri, and then you have Poppy Fields, and then you have No Rest for the Old Lady, and each of them deals with a certain kind of violence and a quest for finding peace, finding a harmony, finding something that gets you to a place of calm, which doesn't happen. So I do feel that in a certain way, all the films, even the two documentaries by Andrei Tăscălescu and Andra Tarara, which are a quest, as I was saying, it's a very intimate, a very personal quest that starts from some very violent process that takes place inside. And this is the case of also Unidentified, and this is also the case of Poppy Field by...
It's also the case in Mikado.
In Mikado, absolutely.
And as well in Otto the Barbarian. So probably, you know, like the common thread of all these films is violence, either the physical violence or in most cases the emotional violence. We can talk about like an emotional conflict with violence undertones that actually generate the story that lead to a certain resolution, sometimes calm, sometimes not necessarily solving the conflict, but reaching, let's say, a point of understanding closure in most films.
Do you find there's a difference between the violence that you have in The Oak by Pintilie, let's say, in that kind of older generation, and the type of violence and search that you find in these films? How would you put them in parallel? Is there a difference?
I think it's more nuanced, the violence now, and probably deals with frustration, probably deals with the modern times. The violence in The Oak was a result of the living under that regime. It was indeed a lot of frustration, but it was a burst. It was a violent language, violent behavior, violent resolution. Everything was violent there. In these new films, I think we deal with people who repressed a lot, and then there's a violent trigger that find sooner or later a resolution or a solution to this conflict. But it's not like, I mean, the way we talk now about this violence, people might expect blood on the wall and like very heavy gestures or like a very violent cinematic language. We don't deal about that. We deal mostly with a very repressed type of violence, which is there.
Which makes me think also about the fact that I always was referring to this Radu Muntean film, The Rage, which was his first feature, and I always felt that this feeling was there. So this feeling is there in a way or another, going from one generation to another and redesigning itself. And now let's talk a bit about the shorts, because they are very diverse. What about them? How do you feel these new voices? Because most of the shorts are really voices that are going probably to develop in the future.
I mean, there are more and more shorts being made in Romania, either in film school. The state film school generates a lot of short films, which the students make every year. It's like their end of the year proof that they are on the right path, or either graduation films. Then there are the independent short films. Then there are like short films made by established directors who in between two features make like a short film. It's always difficult, of course, with short films. It's very difficult to find a common thread, so we don't even look for that. I mean, what we are interested in is actually make a group of shorts that are aesthetically eclectic, people who are interested in a very diverse form of expressions, how to deal with the narrative, and you can sometimes sense which path they will take in the future, whether they will be the type to focus on a certain type of cinema, which is the auteur cinema, or directors who are interested in making films that are super audience friendly. And you have from experimental animation to musicals. I think it's a year when we have 2 musicals, which is unheard.
Short
in
musicals.
Short musicals. And considering that we didn't have a feature, you know, a musical in Romania, I should expect maybe a musical made in the next years, just because I sense like this little interest in making musicals in school, you know, as a short film. Then you have that type of short film that's actually very influenced by the new Romanian cinema, the aesthetic, the slice of life so-called type. And then you have the dark ones or the light ones, the funny ones, the heavy ones. We were actually trying to incorporate the more diverse voices possible in this program. I think it's pretty exciting, the mix. Yeah.
Right, now a last question about this edition. We were challenged always, Mihai, when first we started the festival 16 years ago. We were challenged with the idea that very, very quickly, in a couple of years, there will be no longer Romanian films to show, Romanian films to be successful, Romanian films to produce surprise internationally, and still it's going on, it's moving on. We still are very much in the film festivals. We still, some of our films are getting awards year after year. What do you think we can expect from the coming years, now that there's also the challenge of the digital, there's the challenge of a world that is changing? What do you think we can expect in terms of Romanian movies done, and this emerging generation who's now there, which is now coming up?
Well, I'm afraid we won't have in the close future something equally strong as the films from the new wave. I'm not expecting any artistic manifesto, I'm not expecting any new wave, but this is not necessarily something bad, because we know that this type of currents, they come once in a lifetime. Each national cinematography has one at some point in history, in relation with not only with the arts, but with social political context. And we do know that the new Romanian cinema, the new Romanian wave, when it arose to fame and everything, had to do with a social context, with the recent history and everything. Now we have the distance to put things in perspective and understand how it was possible for Romania to come up with this aesthetic that was like an artistic revolution and that influenced a lot of other national cinemas and so on and so forth. What we are dealing now is with a very different generations that's like trying everything. What's the common thread? Maybe they are taking risks, and on one thing, it's not like there's a pattern they need to repeat. Everything can go. I mean, everything goes. That's why I was saying that you have like these musicals, you have like a strong thriller, you have in the program this year like Unidentified, which didn't quite happen in the recent Romanian cinema. You have a strong and popular film dealing with a gay topic, like Poppyfield. You have a film like Otto the Barbarian, which could qualify as a teen movie that Romania didn't quite have, because most of the films were dealing with the middle class and with adults, but this is the first film that focuses on the young generation, and not only on young generations, but with the problems of the young generations and this conflict between the young generation and the old generation, besides also talking about mental issues, which is again a first in the Romanian cinema. So it's like no safety net. Like all these newcomers are venturing into uncharted territories with topics that are the talk of the day, and they are like fearlessly throwing themselves into this. And most films feel authentic. In this respect. I mean, because that's the challenge, to make a film pushing all the fashionable buttons nowadays, and for an audience it's easy to detect whether this is something of an authentic thing, that the director really believes in these topics, or they make these films dealing with these topics just because it's fashionable.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and because today, while we are filming this this dialogue between us, outside there's a bit of the mood of the end of the Porumboiu film, because we didn't mention Corneliu Porumboiu at all. There's this mood of snow that falls and was so beautiful, and now all of a sudden it will become again mud. I think that we can just end this conversation, Mihai, and thank you, and let's thank to all the audience that we are going to have due to Jacob Burns Film Center and the platform that allows us to present the festival this year. Thank you, Mihai, and let's hope that our audiences will be there.
Finding refuge in an equally tough kind of cinema and offer, yeah.
Thank you.